Thank you. Good-natured people, then, are very often under attack. Young employees, bullies will attack young employees to prevent them from developing competence and thereby becoming a threat. And young people are terribly, terribly vulnerable because they have not yet developed the base, the experience that tells them, I am good. They don't know if they're good. Women, yes, definitely, especially women over 40. I don't know why that is, but there you have it. Okay. And who are the bullies? Again, this might come as a surprise. Yes. They tend to be very insecure people. Little or no empathy. Power freaks. Yes, you bet they're power freaks. They're threatened by competence. And I'm sorry to say it, yes, more likely to be women than men. I do not know if this is a result of the fact that more and more women have moved into the workplace over the last 30, 40 years. But women bully differently from men. And I just love this quote. Something about bullies, if they know they're lacking a quality that they really want, they can get quite vicious towards people who have that quality. They feel denied, they feel cheated, and they blame the person who has the good quality. Bullying can be either learned or it can be a part of a pathological condition. Many people have abusive family lives. They grow up, the parents scream and fight. One parent might physically abuse the other. They seem to develop a kind of emotional numbing. They don't develop that fellow feeling with other people. They really are insensitive to how their words and their deeds will affect the people that they're dealing with. They'll say things that are cutting or damaging to your self-esteem or just nastily critical, and they won't think twice about it. To them, it's perfectly normal. To them, it's always the way it's been done in their lives. What's your complaint? People like that, who are normal people biologically, but emotionally injured, will be deeply upset if you say to them, you're bullying me. Because from their way of thinking, what's wrong with what I said or did? It's the way I was treated. You're oversensitive. Ah, you're the problem. They will get very upset. People with a pathological condition of antisocial personality disorder are the most dangerous bullies. All bullies are dangerous. They're all practicing a form of violence. But these people are seriously, seriously dangerous. It used to be thought that maybe 1 to 4 people out of 1,000 had APD. In more recent years, that's come up to an estimate of as many as 1 in 25 people. It takes only 3 of these conditions or symptoms for a psychiatrist or a doctor to make a diagnosis of APD. The reason why I think that there is this difference between like 4 out of 1,000 and 1 out of 25 is probably visibility. Because if you commit a murder or if you destroy a world-class bank, it's kind of visible. And most people with this disorder, they trot along through society under the radar. Their public persona is that of a normal person, and only, say, in private do you get to meet the real person. This has happened to me, and it's a shock. Some of you may have been through it too. I had one manager who was in public, mature, responsible, admirable fellow. Oh, yes. One day he called me into a meeting, and as soon as the door was shut, he turned into this nasty, spiteful, mean child. And I was totally, totally blown away. I sat there thinking, what did I do? He was just a normal guy outside, and suddenly he's attacking me. He's pouring out this verbal spew. I thought, what did I do? The truth is, which I realized a long time later, behind that closed door, he no longer had to maintain his persona. He no longer had to put on an act. There were no witnesses. And behind that door, he could be himself. As soon as we left his office, he put on the mask again and became the responsible, mature manager. People, men and women, are equally likely to have APD. They're called either sociopaths or psychopaths. And there's considerable argument going on right now in the medical literature about whether you call them sociopaths or whether you call them psychopaths. There is a slight difference. It seems to be that sociopaths are more influenced by upbringing, and psychopaths are more by genetics. In fact, one of the leading researchers on the subject is Dr. Robert Hare at UBC. And he developed something called the Hare Psychopathy Index, which rates them on a scale of 1 to 10. And 10 is serial murderer, mass murderer. 1 might be just that neighbor's kid who's always doing risky sports and falling out of trees and getting hurt riding his bicycle over cliffs. One of the characteristics of a psychopath is that they are very insensitive to personal danger. Okay. But for the purpose of my presentations, I like to use the word sociopath because I'm talking about a social environment in which these people are active. Okay. The characteristic that sociopaths or psychopaths have in common is this absolute lack of conscience, not a wisp of conscience. No guilt, remorse, shame. These people are totally empowered to do anything. Anything. Most of them don't do anything terribly violent because they can get what they want without having to use violence, unless it's behind doors. For example, in abusive spousal relationships, what goes on behind the closed doors might be pretty horrific. They cannot love. They cannot respond to love. They go through their whole lives never ever knowing what it feels like to be loved. That's really a curse, a terrible curse. Never accept responsibility, crave power. I think myself that they're quite aware that they are different from other human beings and that they resent it deeply. They know they're missing something. And they can see how people who are in love or friendly react with each other. They see how happy people are when they love each other. And they never get to be part of that. So they seem to overcompensate by craving power, domination, control, which makes them exceptionally dangerous in organizations. And they don't learn from experience. If a sociopath is caught stealing at her job and fired, she'll steal at the next job. She'll just change the way she does it. Before I retired, I was working with a woman who I am sure was a sociopathic bully. And she started by attacking my self-esteem, trying to humiliate me, put me down. Our organization had policies against that. I complained to management. Management investigated. She was disciplined. She stopped doing that. So what did she do instead? She then started attacking my competence. She went to my clients and started saying nasty things about me, that I was no good, et cetera, et cetera. I complained. Management investigated. She was disciplined. She stopped doing that. She then tried to get my job canceled. Get rid of the job, get rid of the employee. That was also investigated. She was also disciplined, yada, yada. But then I'd had enough, and I left. What this illustrates is, I think, two things. First of all, sociopaths don't change their behavior. She just kept changing the direction of the attack. And the other thing is that the behavior always escalates. It will always increase. Even if you try to placate a bully, say, oh, don't hurt me, I'll go along with you. You will not be safe. Bullies will co-opt people for this very reason, people who are frightened, who are terrified they'll lose their jobs. They don't please the bully, but they're not safe. They will continue to suffer. The ego of the sociopath is something immense. They really have a sense of entitlement that it beggars belief. They do seem to feel that they are like the star of a movie, featuring themselves, and everyone else is a little bit player who's there to support them. They don't follow social norms and whatnot. You know, it's not important to them. It's for other people. They can lie like you wouldn't believe. And they lie very easily. Because one thing about sociopaths is that the people with APD seem to have a difficulty processing both emotion. This is why they never developed this ability to love. They just never process emotion. And they also have some kind of problem with language. Words do not have emotional context or emotional meaning to a sociopath or a psychopath. For example, supposing someone says to you, "I love you." Oh, could there be a more beautiful phrase in the whole English language? When someone says, "I love you" to me, I want to go out and please that person. I want to do things for them that would make them happy. I want to do whatever they'd like. Believe me, sociopaths know that. A sociopath to whom the words "I love you" are spoken may as well be hearing "bop, bop, bop, bop." It has that much emotional meaning. But they sure know how to use loving words to manipulate other people. In the workplace, you can trust me, you can rely on me, you can count on me. I'm behind you, I'm right with you. Don't worry. These words have no emotional context to a sociopath. They're used to manipulate. They're used to get what the sociopath wants. And this is just a few words about how charming they can be. Truly, one of their defining characteristics is charm. Because they know from an early age they're not quite like other people, they do study normal people and how they behave. They learn to mimic normal social behavior. They start the school ground or with their families. They learn what they can and cannot get away with. They learn that charming people are very influential. They make friends. They have people who want to please them. This becomes a hazard in the workplace because when someone is being bullied, when someone is being subjected to this terrible stress of bullying, their behavior begins to change. They might become, testy, impatient. They might suffer from insomnia and come into work with their, eyes down to here. They might have headaches and be irritable. But the sociopath, always charm personified. If the bullied employee complains, then people will say, well, she's complaining about Jane over there, and Jane's so nice. She's always nice. And look, she's so irritable and whiny. We don't think she's got a valid complaint, because we know Jane, she's always got a good word for you. I used to be, before I retired, as a member of my union executive, and got to handle cases. And one in particular stands out in my mind, of an employee whom no one in the union actually wanted to help because she was just a pain where you sit down. She couldn't keep a coherent thought in her head. She couldn't follow a sentence from start to finish. You'd come to an agreement with her, she'd flip it around and change it. She was awful. And then one day I had a chance to meet her boss that she was complaining about. Oh, he was nice, affable, smooth, calming. And it wasn't until I got a sort of a look in his eye. Am I getting through to her? Is this working on her? And then something clicked in my head, and I thought, the employee is suffering from PTSD. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And this guy is the one who did it to her. Because he looked so smooth and charming, it was very difficult to think of him as what he was, a monster walking around in an expensive suit. I'm happy to say that came to a good resolution for the employee. What happens, though, when a normal person encounters a sociopath in the workplace is that people who have consciences never automatically assume that bizarre behavior is the fault of another person. Like that manager I was telling you about a moment ago, whom behind closed doors would turn into this spiteful, horrible child, I assumed I'd done something. I assumed I'd done something. I couldn't put my finger on it, which adds to the confusion and the distress of such an encounter. But because I'm a person with a conscience, I tend to blame myself. I must have done something. When you meet a sociopath or an aggressive bully,